So, hello everyone. My name is Rishikesh Nare, and we welcome you to our special series, The Economic Times Cutting Chai Stories, an initiative by ETH. The key to cutting chai conversation is to have a good discussion around the areas of your early life, education to grooming, training, business sense, skill augmentation to work life balance. And before we begin, let me set the context right. Okay. This is the series of candid conversations where we take you through the inspirational journey of influential people. You all have seen these personalities in the corporate world. You've seen them, giving long speeches in the boardroom. But now we're just taking them away from that boardroom drama and to have some fun chat for some time. So today we have with us Mr. Anil Kothuri, CEO, Fed Bank Financial Services Limited. Mr. Kothuri, thank you so much. Thanks for your time. It is wonderful to have you here. And when I was doing my research from my end about you, I mean, you do quite fascinating things, other than work. So, we're extremely excited and we want to know what else you do. So let's start with your childhood. Uh, let's go back to your schooling days and the background. So you belong to Mumbai or some other city?
So I spent the first decade of my life in Hyderabad.
Oh, brilliant.
Studied in a school called the Hyderabad Public School, which has now become very famous because Satya Nadella and Shantanu Narayan and all these folks are from there. In
Oh,
fact,
that
Satya was what, 3 or 4 years my senior, and Shantanu was maybe 7 years senior and stuff. So all of these things you rediscover once they've become famous. So yeah, I spent the first decade of my life in Hyderabad and then moved on to Bombay, where I did some more of my education.
Oh, so that's brilliant. So when it comes to other city, say Hyderabad, and then when you move to another city like Mumbai, it's very fast paced. Other than being very fast paced, is there any difference or cultural shift that you see and you relate to your childhood days that maybe this is something different?
Yes, actually, it's a different ethos in Hyderabad. It's a different ethos in Bombay. Okay, and the appropriate word for that, I think, is tehzeeb. Okay, in Hyderabad, they have a different way of articulating things. You go to a shop, he shows you something. He says, "Ye shandar cheez hai." In Bombay, you go to Crawford Market, he'll tell you, "Ye A1 maal hai." So I think that describes the difference in ethos between the two cities. Okay? Hyderabad's all about how you express yourself and things, whereas Bombay is about getting the job done.
Yeah, I mean, Hyderabad, they will tell you that, how, in a flowery language, that how that product, it is placed on the shelf. And in Mumbai, it is for you. Please take it. And I have to move to
Yeah.
another business in next 2 seconds. So when you talk about your school days, uh, anything that you remember that, that has inspired you to get into this technology field? I mean, it's very difficult to identify that touch point or that reference point back in those days. But according to me, anything that what we do, we keep on calling it like professional life, personal life. It's not that. It's about the characteristics and the attributes. What makes you what you are today. Today I'm interviewing you. I do this part. I do my bit in marketing field because maybe there are reference point in my childhood. So any reference points in from your childhood?
So my childhood was all about schooling, as in 9 to 5, and going to school and coming and all that. And I think what we have is the Indian educational system and the ethos, especially in the schools that I went to, that nurtured a certain sense of curiosity and ensured that the time spent there was worthwhile. You know, there were a series of activities and a series of interactions which fostered a certain attitude, which I think held me in good stead in later life. I form the belief that the bulk of your development and evolution happens earlier in your life than later
Right.
on, and what you learn then is what you build on later. Okay, and to that end, I think there have been huge contributors to building the kind of foundation that I've had the privilege to have in my school life.
So were you a mischievous kind of a guy, or were you shy, or did you with the right balance between being mischievous and being studious?
I think I was an active child,
Okay.
so that's what it was, and curious and active and involved in a lot of things. that really was what I was as a child. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, see, it's a very good statement that you made. The sense of curiosity that I think your school helped you to nurture that part. And in any field, whatever you do, if you're curious, then you learn about it. If you learn about it, you do well. It's a simple, a simple one-line science that is underlying here. Uh, Other than that, what do you do? I mean, as a kid, you had any hobbies that you wanted to pursue, or were you a really, really studious kind of a guy and sincere one, who would actually always live up to the expectations of the parents?
All right. An activity that I got into very early in my life was quizzing. Okay. Our teacher put together a quiz team for an interclass quiz and stuff, and she chose me to be part of her team. So I got to take part in a quiz very early, and that's that I have continue to pursue right through my life. So the first quiz was in the early 80s, and
Okay.
decades I've stayed in touch with the hobby, and it has enriched my life really.
I have this fascination, and most of us, I think, and the viewers also, they will have this question that, how do you prepare for that quiz? I mean, people say that you have to read newspapers, you watch TV, you do other stuff, you do your research, but at an early age, it's very difficult to, gather this information and go on a competitive platform, fight and win. I mean, so again, there are too many layers. So, how did you manage that part?
It just boils down to having a sense of curiosity,
Okay.
and that's what it is. I'll give you an example. Okay, sometime in 2004, 2005, I saw this painting called The Scream by a person called Edward Munch. Okay, now because I saw it a month later, that painting got stolen from a museum in Oslo. So that registered. Had I not heard of that painting, then the second piece of information wouldn't have registered. Okay, so
Right.
it happened. Now, a year after that, there was this movie called Dawn 2, starring Shah Rukh Khan.
Right.
Now, there's a scene there where Shah Rukh Khan has a lot of treasures in his vault. He says, "Ye wali painting maine churai hui hai." Now, I said, this is The Scream, and it actually got stolen the previous year. And Shah Rukh Khan is saying, I stole it. That was a nice touch in the movie.
Right.
That registered because, I had read that the painting got stolen, which in turn registered because I had heard of the painting before. So it's really a virtuous cycle, and you have some pieces of knowledge and information, you go around making connections. So it's about curiosity, it's about making connections. So once you have the framework in place in your mind, then you know how to pigeonhole various facts and various bits of information, and it just keeps building. So it's really like a network of information in your mind. It just needs to be sorted appropriately, and I think it's a curiosity gene really that facilitates this.
I mean, I can visualize now. I think there are in Hollywood movies, and I think nowadays in Indian movies as well. They have that big chart when they have to find a criminal. They have those touch points, and now I get an understanding why do they do that? Because everything is somewhere down the line. It is connected to one particular inception point, and if you identify that inception point, you're there. So, have you ever thought of getting into Secret Service or something like that? I mean, you could have done much better because with that quiz uh, knowledge, you could have done so many things.
Actually, it's about making connections, and that's a trait that is useful in any facet of life. For instance, I'm in the lending business, okay, and you look for trends in the lending business of kinds of borrowers who will pay, who will not repay, of the people you've lent to, who have a problem. Especially, let's say in the previous year, there's been a pandemic, okay, and there's a moratorium. So now you should try and forecast how is it that your portfolio will behave later on. Now that's a problem that needs to be solved. So you try and make some connections and try and classify certain customers in certain ways. You keep getting more and more pieces of information as time passes on. So you refine your models. So it's not just Secret Service and stuff. Okay, that's the most glamorous platform maybe for the skill and talent of making connections. But
Okay.
I think every facet of human endeavor, there is place to do things in a more mindful manner.
I mean, if you have a if you apply it well, definitely it can give you all the solutions, all possible solutions to the problem. I'm not necessarily into, because right now I can relate, because when you told me that that painting got stolen, then Shah Rukh Khan took a reference, and this is something that now I will never forget, because you gave me those reference points. And if you keep on feeding this reference point, so you do with your team. I mean, when you manage a big set of people, you need to know, you need to understand the behavior pattern, you need to understand, so many things. So does that work?
Uh, yeah, in a way, and I'll tell you why. It's about ensuring that communication is memorable. Okay, so there's a hierarchy of things that you communicate, and it needs to be in a way that each bit of communication builds on the previous one and reinforces it. Okay,
Right.
so it's the same thing. If you have one fact and if that's enshrined in your mind, then the second thing sits a little easy, and so on. So that's really the same principle when it comes to communicating with the large teams. So if you know that there are some basics that are already communicated and that are already lodged in people's minds, it makes it easier to build on that foundation, really.
And that's a great insight, I think, and this is going to help all the viewers, and definitely the millennials that you guys were talking about. They have a different approach, but yeah, this is a simple science, and if you apply it well, you have all the answers. I mean, other than I mean, of course, you can't be away from your quizzing partner the rest of your life, because that is your lifestyle that I can see right now. Uh, Anything other than that you do?
Yes, about a decade or so ago, I began running. I took up running as a hobby, and I run up half marathons. I've done what, some 35 or so half marathons over the past 8, 9 years, and that's a hobby that I pursue. So I'm out running about 4 days a week with my running group. So on Sundays we do a long run. So that's a hobby that I've continued, and this hobby actually was born out of some reading that I did. There was a statement that stuck with me. It says that your schedule reflects your priorities. Your
Right.
schedule doesn't rhyme. So I thought through my list of priorities, and I found that my schedule did not include anything to do with fitness. Then I said this needs to be remedied, and I began running, and haven't stopped since.
I mean, that's great. And now I'm just thinking about the time management part, because you do quizzing, you must be studying for that separately. Your work, 35 half marathons, 9 years at an average. You do 4 marathons, half marathons a year. So you prepare every day, because you can't just run a marathon, because those are not well versed with the fitness, facts. Let me tell you, it's not easy to do marathons. Like, because I know people, they do just 2 marathons a year, because they keep on telling me that it is not about running, it's about recovering in that period, getting your muscles in a right state of there has to be a connection between your muscle and mind. You do that, and then you do go for another marathon. But so how do you do that? I mean, so many things. How do you manage your time? Because that is the most important thing that everybody struggles with. And whenever you go, you ask someone, typically in a professional environment, how do you manage it? So they say that you have a calendar, you do that. But other than calendar, other than that Excel sheet, that's what we have. Uh, is there any formula that you can touch upon, or you can tell our viewers?
You prioritize. You do the things which are most important to you in the personal space as well as in the professional space. uh, One of the things is that not everything is important, and not everything needs to be done by you. Okay, at work there are 100 things to be done, okay, of which maybe 10 you need to do yourself and 90 other people can do, so you can delegate and get pretty much the same output. So I think to prioritize is an important thing. The second thing also is to ensure that you make the most of every moment. It's a bit like what Rudyard Kipling said. If you fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, which basically means that, make every minute count and stuff. And you realize the value of time, when you begin running. Okay, you know the difference between 6 minutes and 6.5 minutes, or 5 minutes and 5.5 minutes. So that half a minute, a lot can happen in half a minute.
Yeah, I mean, if you follow formula, again, they split 1 second into 1,000 pieces. and then they find out the difference between the world champion and the normal racing driver. And I completely get your point. So if we go back to days back in days in Hyderabad, and if you see yourself today, you know, and if is there any something that you would want to change? You would want to take a different path and get onto that path, not because what you're doing today is you're not happy with it. It is definitely you're happy with, and you've structured your life. But if given an opportunity, what that stream could be that you would really want to go get into?
No, I wouldn't want to change my life in any way. I've had opportunities and I've made choices. For instance, whether it's a choice of career or in my personal life, those have been mindful choices. So there's nothing that I would change there. It is just that in my younger days, I was pretty much a couch potato. Maybe I would led a more physically active life. That is something that I try and tell everybody right now. That try and be more active in your younger days, really. So
Yeah. Again, very interesting questions, and I get very interesting answers for that because I don't prepare our guests with that question. So, if given an opportunity again, you have all the resources, you have all the budgets, you have all the support from the technology side. What is that one innovation that dream innovation that you would want to bring in? I mean, when Elon Musk spoke about SpaceX 20 years back, people would have thought, yeah, he doesn't make any sense, but he made it into reality. And all technology guys I know, they have some hidden dream, which is right now today seems to be unimaginable. But you guys have those thoughts. So any particular thought that you have, any dream project that you would want to do?
yeah, so my work involves lending to individuals, okay, based on hard data and soft interfaces, okay. Making that process a lot more efficient really is at the nub of all innovation that we do. So I think given all resources and technology and stuff, what I would like to do is have somebody uh, grant the appropriate permissions and then get all the information about that individual from the public domain and fashion a lending product for him. That would make the process very, very efficient and and very convenient for the customer. So that's really what I can think of.
Okay, great. And the other part, if you move now, I have, I was reading through some data, I think yesterday, and we have seen the pattern where, definitely, and into the startup space. We have so many startups coming up, and we talk about very few startups those are successful, and the success rate is hardly 2%. Any message that you want to give to those 98% of the people who face challenges in terms of funding, in terms of getting the right technology, right set of people, right set of attitude? What do you want to suggest? Because it's at the very young age they start, and 24, 25, one day you see yourself, as you see so many heroic moments, and one fine day you have nothing. So how to manage that part, how to build your mindset around these negative pointers, if you can just talk us through and help them to understand a better way of looking things.
All right. I haven't ever run a startup, but I'll give this a shot. um, my understanding is this calls for an amalgamation of two contrary skills. One is to be completely passionate about what you're doing and believe in your idea. And that's how great change is wrought in the world. So nobody thought of email, and somebody one day decides that this is a good way of communicating. So it requires some belief, some bit of evangelization. At the same time, you need probably a critical practical side where you run with the idea for just long enough and not longer than that, so that the enthusiasm doesn't convert into disappointment or bitterness or whatever else it is. I think to manage these two contrary traits is an important skill for any founder, anybody to have, is what I would think. You need to persevere, you need to be passionate, but still you need to do it for just long enough is what I would think. The rest of the stuff is practical, getting somebody to back your idea or getting the right team or anything else it is. But I just think the self-management skills are important and sit at the core of it all, really.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's brilliant. So all of you, please listen to these advices that we bring out from these conversations, and definitely, uh, some way or the other, these things are going to help you. Before we move to another segment, just one question that I want to ask. Your quizzing bit, okay? Let's go back to that part again. Has that helped you to form a different personality or to gain different attributes which are helping you today? And if yes, then what are those?
So quizzing helps in a few different ways. The first is that you accumulate knowledge and facts and have a sense of curiosity. So that's an attitude, that's an approach that you bring to your work and to all your interactions. Okay. So when I see people or interact with people, okay, I also understand them in a slightly different way, or their background and their achievements and stuff, and a few quirky things that they have. So for instance, I was interacting with a certain investor, and based on his surname I figured out that his granddad was a musician who was awarded the Padma Shri. So
Oh,
that's a that I was able to bring to the conversation very quickly. So there you are. And I don't think that's a common conversation that the individual would have had, to with people who didn't know him. So it just helps you bring something else to the table. So that is one. The second thing is that um, um, in a different environment, you form a quizzing team. That's a different way of making associations. So in every educational institution that I moved to, or every organization that I worked in, okay, I formed connections with people owing to quizzing, and you take part as a team, you win a few quizzes. So it's a virtuous cycle that kicks in. So it helps relate with people better. It helps you do your job better. So yeah, and it keeps your mind alive, really.
oh. So I mean, get that. And now, definitely, thank you for this particular part because I have changed my perspective in last 5 minutes. So even if I see anything right now in my table, say I can see my phone, I say, okay, why Apple has started now? Apple, if I consider Apple, I've got now 10 other questions which I never had, and that comes from the thought of being curious about the things that you see. It's not, I mean, a phone is not a small innovation. The greatest innovation that we all have seen. There are so many things, and it's not necessarily that have to be into technology field, you have to be into a certain field. It's a sense of curiosity that helps you to gather information, and that information is going to help you, nobody else. Is that correct?
Yes, uh, where it often helps you, and very often that information just tickles your curiosity, and it just makes you happy. That's it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, again, we have, I mean, we have Mr. Sikka with us. Mr. Sikka, just one question for both of you again, from a layman perspective. Okay, so we've seen what has happened in 2020, up downs that we have seen because of COVID and other things. Uh, Now, where do we see this landscape moving into 2021? And from the layman's perspective, what technology is going to help me? I mean, because anything that happens in the back end, that definitely helps us, all of us. But in terms of innovations, do you think that growth is going to get accelerated because of the pandemic, and it is going to help the end user eventually? I mean, your thoughts on that?
Anil, you'll like take a shot first.
All right. So I think what the pandemic has done is that it has helped people focus on what's important and what counts. Okay, so I think there's going to be a reprioritization of people's behavior, spending habits, whatever else it is. Okay, so that's the big change that I see as a consequence of the pandemic. Okay, now that will translate into different things, into spending habits, how people use their leisure, how people interact with each other and stuff. Now, where I sit, I've one of the realizations that has been that people come to office not just to earn their living, but there's also a huge social component to it. Okay, that is one of the things that has become evident. Okay, uh, we've begun to use technology well, and we are getting the output that we need, from our people, and business results, are not compromised owing to the pandemic. But the big thing that has changed is that people are not able to come to office and relate to each other and do things together that they used to. So I think the big takeaway has been that people want to interact with other people, and they will look for platforms to do so. Okay, so that has been really the big takeaway. And the second one is that people are going to prioritize things, so that the pandemic has caused people to think of what is really most important to them, and they will direct their energies differently now. So that's my take, Ashish.
Sure. Thanks, Anil. And I think just Rishikesh, just taking it up from what Anil said, I think one of the things which people have also recognized during this entire time is that technology is no longer an expense. It's actually an investment, because it helps you to make your life better. And very few simple examples, right? If earlier we were using a laptop for, let's say, 4 or 5 years, now you spend so much time on your laptop doing these Zoom meetings, team meetings, and stuff like that. You actually want the latest and the greatest and the best available, because you want voice clarity to be there. You want your laptop to be fast, because you're spending like 8 to 9 hours on that. So that's one big change which we have seen. The other big change, which actually I was discussing with Anil before this, is earlier it was work from office, then it became work from home, and I think slowly the way it is going, it would be anywhere, everywhere. Basically, you have to be productive, you have to be available. It doesn't mean that you create a culture where you don't have a work-life balance. But as you and Anil were discussing, people will always have passions which are there. But at the same time, if they're passionate enough, they'll carve off time for those passions, and at the same time be available for their organizations to be more productive than what they were before the pandemic. And I think third is what Anil summed up quite well. I think people have uh, spent a lot of time indoors. They have also had the time of self-reflection. In fact, when I meet my friends, I'm very surprised to learn that actually each and every one of them have picked up a different skill during this time, and they've been able to master it. And that, as you guys were discussing, it lightens that bulb of curiosity in you. And once it does, you want to learn more and more. And I do see that that change. I think people also on a slightly personal front. Personally, for me, I value my family time now much more than what maybe I did before COVID, which was there. I want to spend time with my family. I want to spend time with my pet. And I think that takes a precedence over anything else. So those are the changes. And I think in all of these, technology can play a part. Technology can help you spend more time with your family, because you can do meetings remotely. You can do meetings from anywhere. You can approve, reject stuff on the system. You don't have to necessarily go to office to sign a document. So I think things are changing definitely much faster and much better, and people are using it for their benefit. I think we are good. I think the one last final question, which maybe I'd like to ask Anil is, Anil, we spoke about the challenges, what we saw during the last year. But as we step into 2021 and the financial year 2021, how do you see things panning out, or what are the trend lines that you see emerging, and what would be your priorities looking at the new financial year?
Uh, the new financial year is a year where we're going to bounce back from one which has been marked by inactivity and gloom all around. So I think for that reason alone, there's going to be a huge amount of growth and optimism. That is one thing. The second thing is, even if there is a second wave of the disease and stuff, infrastructurally as well as mentally, I think we are all much in a much better place when it comes to cope with it. And the third thing is that there's a realization that these kind of disruptions may come and they go, but the show goes on, and and life will go on. So for all these reasons, I think I'm very optimistic about the year ahead, and I believe that as a country, we will do well regardless of the progress of the pandemic, and we have the right uh, mind space as well as infrastructure to help deal with it really. So that's my take on the year ahead. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks, Anil. Thanks for your time, and hopefully this year maybe we'll be able to meet face to face, and wish you all the best.
Thanks, Ashish. Look forward. Thanks for having me here.
So everybody, that was Anil Kotri for you. I mean, he has a unique way of approaching situations and scenarios. He believes that sense of curiosity prepares you better for your upcoming challenges. So, be curious, keep wondering, and you get all your answers. And that's how you become successful. Yeah. Thank you so much, Mr. Kotri. Thanks for your time. And thank you for sharing those insightful thoughts on a simple concept of curiosity. And that is going to help all our viewers to, structure their thinking process again.